Hi, everyone. Hi, Rabble.
Hey,
You were one of Twitter's first employees.
yep.
You call yourself an activist turned technologist. And last November, Jack Dorsey announced that you were rebooting Vine as Divine. The concept is no AI-generated videos, all based on an open protocol. But Vine got shut down in 2016, so I'm curious what makes you nostalgic about this era?
So Vine was the first big social video app where people did these 6-second looping videos, and it was the first time that we saw creators become stars, but it also sort of lacked a business model. And when the platform was, Twitter was trying to figure it out, they didn't know how to sustain it. And so, Jack and I were talking, and he said that, his biggest regret was shutting it down in 2016. And I asked him, well, can we bring it back? Can we find those old videos? Can we reproduce this idea of these 6-second looping videos? But can we do it in a better way? Can we do it that centers humanity, that centers open source, that works on an open permissionless network? And so we built it as an experiment. And then when I was thinking about, well, what would make it new today? I was like, well, I don't like all the AI slop. I want to be able to view my social media feed that it's genuinely human. And so I dug into the technology, and I figured out there were ways to filter out the AI-generated content. And then the rest of the world sort of discovered it, and we've gotten a huge amount of attention.
And so how do you reconcile this sort of archive project endeavor with trying to build an app that's fit for purpose in a completely new landscape in 2026?
It's one of those weird things of nostalgia and going back to the past, but also creating something new. So, Divine is open source, but it has the old Vine archive. It has most of those old videos. But we're thinking about how do we build something new, in 2026 that empowers people, empowers creators, empowers users to choose their algorithm, to get a say over their experience, and be able to move from one app to another. So a lot of it is about making social media work more like podcasting, where the creator and the user are empowered, and they're not dependent on the platforms.
So I'm sensing a bit of frustration with the current way that these other apps are run.
Yes.
Can you tell me a bit more about what's the list of complaints that you're trying to address?
Well, so the complaints are that when we use these apps, we can reach billions of people. We can reach these massive audiences, but we're working with opaque algorithms, and all of a sudden, one day after the next, you violate some terms of service rule you didn't know existed. You don't have agency over it. And so what we're trying to do is establish social media in a way that empowers users and empowers communities in the same way that you own your own domain name, you own your own website. And so we want to have that happen for your own social media. And so we're bringing back the old videos, we're bringing back the format, but we're also saying, what is a future that is more human-centric? What is this future that empowers people and communities?
And so looking at what's happening under the hood, how can you guarantee that there's no AI-generated content on your app?
That's a tricky question, and we can't guarantee 100%. But we actually use a bunch of DRM technology that's built into the phones that does verification that things were shot with the phone camera. And then we work with a bunch of actually AI partners to do detection to see whether or not it works. So we work with these big AI labs because they don't actually want to dupe people in terms of this. And so they have technology that isn't just looking, is there a watermark or are there 6 fingers, but other more sort of core details of the videos that we can use to detect whether or not it's generated AI.
And one of those tools is proof mode, right?
Yep.
It has different levels of content veracity, if you
Yep.
will. Do you think that it might create a false sense of truth or safety on the app just by having that correlation, Divine equals no AI, therefore I'm fine to explore?
Sure, I mean, just because it's not AI generated doesn't mean it's true. Proof mode was created for journalists who who wanted to be able to record issues of human rights abuses, or was this interview real, or was this thing shot real, where you can sort of track the provenance of this technology. Like the videos, where did it come from, how was it edited, that kind of thing. So, but it doesn't alleviate the need for fact checkers. It doesn't alleviate the need for people to provide labels. It doesn't alleviate the need for institutions like your own to be able to say, this is a real video and this is not a real video. What we can do is we can check the technology behind it, sort of how the files are created, but we can't check the reality of the situation. That's why we need a community of organizations to collaborate instead of a single institution.
And moving on to the business model, you're currently funded by a nonprofit.
Yep.
Will Divine become a nonprofit itself, or are you exploring different avenues for revenue?
So there's many models for how technology businesses could work, and we're inspired by Mozilla, we're inspired by WordPress, we're inspired by Wikipedia. These are all institutions that have an open source nonprofit and a public benefit corporation that does the two. And so we are creating that. We're creating a nonprofit that will host and own the technology, free for everyone to use, and then a smaller company that will commercialize it and make it an easy-to-use app.
There's already been loads of attempts to fix social media, right?
Everyone thinks they can fix social media, and then they get into it, and they're like, oh my God, this is really complicated.
Is that the stage you're at?
Well, no, so it isn't the stage I'm at, because I've been doing this a long time. Like, I helped create podcasting. I was the founding engineer at Twitter. I saw it grow up, and I saw it go into a place that I didn't like. We were about democratizing the means of communication, both with podcasting and with Twitter. And then it got used in ways that I don't think are very pro-social, that don't make the world a better place for all of us. And so that was why I spent some time working on helping create Blue Sky and helping sort of birth that as a project to create a model for what would be a better version of Twitter. And originally we wanted Twitter to use Blue Sky. But then I thought about video, and I thought about social video, and I realized that so many people actually are using text, and what we are using much more of is social video. And so we need to apply that model of an open internet, a commons where communities of users could choose who their moderators are and where their media is hosted and what algorithms they use and who they want to connect to. Can you follow someone and see their posts? Like, that you shouldn't be fighting with your algorithms. You should have a way of controlling them. And so what we're doing with Divine is bringing that to social video, where we're empowering users to have real control over their experience.
Why do you think specifically that Divine will last? Because Vine was already rebooted once as Byte, and that got shut down in 2023. So what will change this time?
So I had no expectation that this would blow up and get the attention that it has. And it will probably not work, because most of these projects don't work. But what will define whether or not it works, whether or not it becomes something that we're talking about in 5 or 10 years, is not myself, and it's not the technology, and it's not the particulars of how we've set it up, and the nonprofit and the for-profit. None of that matters. What matters are the users. Social media is about people and social connection, and so we need to not think of it as a deterministic, Reels has this functionality, and TikTok has this one, and Snap has this other functionality, and this is the reason they work. The reason all of these platforms work are because of the culture and the humanity that we imbue in them. The people using them are what make them real. And so what will make Divine work is if people start using it and start publishing and start seeing it, and then are able to view the old videos and make new ones. And that is much more important than any of the technology work or the business work we do.
And if you're successful in this mission of creating a healthier social media environment, do you think that others will adapt, copy you, or do you think that you're expecting a sort of social media user empowerment that will not sort of force them to anyway?
So I absolutely hope they adapt. Before I built Divine, I launched this campaign for a social media bill of rights that says you have ownership of your name and your followers. You have the right to exit and move from one platform to another. You have the right to a say in the governance of your technology and your communities. Like, what are the rules? And you have the right to agency and transparency of your algorithms. And so those rights, they were the real goal. And Divine is a way of getting us those rights. It's an example of a social media app and ecosystem that's done right. And so my goal is not just to build a new app, to build a new thing, but it is to change the entire industry so that we do better, so that we reset the balance of power. And, after we launched Divine and we announced it, TikTok put out a press release saying that they're going to let users filter out Gen AI content. They're going to set a setting. And Instagram announced that they were going to do a new initiative to give users more control over your algorithms. And so, to me, that is also a kind of success, where if we're out there and we're presenting a better alternative, then everybody else in the space, they have to adapt.
And going back to that social media Bill of Rights, one of those pillars, like you said, is around community self-governance. Do you think that there's a risk of transferring the moderation from pretty much unaccountable corporate powers to another unaccountable form of power dynamic?
Well, so the goal is not to transfer it to another form of power. The goal is to say, we believe in democracy. I mean, there's a reality which is crazy, is that a community garden club has a more clear democratic governance than a Facebook group. That is crazy. Like, we actually know how to make the rules for our bowling leagues. We know how to collaborate on this stuff, and yet we're not building that into the technology we have. And so, in the Blue Sky ecosystem, you can choose moderation from Blue Sky, or if you want a Black perspective, you can go to Black Sky, and it is Black-owned, created, moderated, where they give you the algorithms and they give you the moderation choice. When Vine was around, there were millions of Black creators who did not have a voice in terms of what their moderation rules were. They couldn't go to a community to make those decisions. There was a disability rights movement in the 1970s, and they came up with this phrase, "Nothing about us without us." And we should be saying that for social media. Like, there's nothing, like, every community on social media should be able to say, you can't make decisions about our rules in our communities without us. And, we're here in Dubai. The community in Dubai and the Gulf and the Arab world absolutely should be able to set up their own servers, their own moderation, their own algorithms that are by and for the Arab community that make sense for Arab values. And that is not the same values that I hold as someone who's from San Francisco.
So do we need a sort of international body to implement the social media Bill of Rights?
We don't need an international body because we have standards of how the internet worked. The IETF, they're the standards body that designed the internet. They have a motto, which is like, we reject kings, presidents, and voting. We believe in rough consensus and running code. That is the motto that gave us the internet, and that is what we're building on today with Divine. We are building on what made the internet great, and we are going to use that to open this up. And so we don't have to have a governance body if we design the technology to work in the right way.
You showed me the app, and I got to see some of the OG Vines on there. Thank you for that. I'm curious to know, the app is currently in beta. It will be released publicly soon. When? And what's left to work on before it's publicly released?
So the initial idea was to throw it out in the world and have a few people see it, and we'll see what happens. And then we got hundreds of millions of people sharing these videos and watching these videos about it, and an overwhelming wave of excitement. And I went, oh shit, we should make sure that it is something that can handle that kind of traffic. And so we're working on the technology. We're making an experience that's smoother and that doesn't give people dead ends, it doesn't have rough user experience. But the biggest thing we're doing is making sure that we are ready with trust and safety. Trust and safety is this really hard problem. I remember the early days of Twitter, we just hoped that trust and safety wouldn't be a problem, and we said, hey, Crystal, why don't you go off and, that content stuff, it's kind of like a, support ticket. Just figure it out. And it took many years to grow that. And so what we're doing with Divine is we're saying, how do we build from the start a better concept of trust and safety using everything we've learned over the last couple decades? And how do we make the technology scale so that we get the experience? And so we're going to be opening it up over the next few months, slowly over time, but we're not going to open it up before it's ready.
Thank you so much, Rabble. I think that's all we have time for today. Thank you.
Thank you so much.